my mouth and the meditations of each of our hearts will be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and Redeemer. Love, love, oh what is love? I invite you to think about the readings from today. I know I struggled with them. These are readings that I've heard over and over again, and you know what? I find them really challenging. So speaking of readings today, I want to pull out a few ideas that spoke to me. And I need to tell you, I plagiarized pretty heavily on some of the readings I did because I really struggled with these readings. I hope some of the things I say to you will resonate. And all the different, I have to tell you that the three things that came through to me were justice and love. And although different, they certainly are related and indeed interconnected. In the English translation of the Bible, we find the single word love, L-O-V-E, love, used over and over again. But in the original, there are different words with different meanings. Eros is a romantic, sexual, sensual, passionate love. Think of the Song of Songs. Then there's storge, family love. Think of our reading today of Joseph and his brothers. Next is philia, a great deep friendship, a brotherly love of the followers of Christ, the disciples of Christ. To understand this better, just look around in the pews. We are the family of St. Jude's. And the one in today's gospel reading, agape, from the Greek. It's not a romantic love. It's not even a liking or a friendship. It goes much, much, much deeper. This is a wholehearted, unresolved, unconditional desire for the well-being of the other. Nothing held back, nothing expected back. The love we have asked for the love of our enemies. With agape, there is only the genuine desire for the well-being of the other. Oddly enough, that doesn't mean you have to like the other person. In fact, you don't have to agree with them or condone their behaviors. You can oppose what they say and speak out against bad behaviors because you do hold their well-being for their own good, and that's important to you. To be kind does not mean to approve. Jesus, throughout the Bible, gives messages that, if taken literally and on the surface, look like Jesus is kind of meek and mild. Believe me, Jesus is nothing like being meek and mild. He's a rebel and a great example of being a non-resistant, a non-violent resistor. His messages are full of non-violence and resistance examples and teachings. Sadly, one of the most misunderstood passages that is misused to justify abuse is found in today's gospel. Jesus says, if anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. The misuse of this reading has brought untold misery to wives and children, the disadvantaged, the marginalized, the poor. Jesus is not telling people to be milquetoasts, doormats, or willing victims, to accept anything that another does. In fact, according to David Ewart, it is the exact opposite. Jesus is advocating non-violent resistance. To understand this, we need to go back 2,000 years. The rich, the powerful became that way by taking the land, the way of living, from the less powerful, the poor. Taking their lands, their fields, their crops, and their flocks, often making the poor slaves and servants. According to Ewart, striking the cheek was the way that the master disciplined a slave or servant. Now, he asserted his authority and put everyone back in line. At the time of Jesus, there was a proper way to do this. Remember, there were strict rules about absolutely everything. You would stand facing your master, and he would strike your right hand with the back of his right hand, because this was the appropriate and proper way to strike a cheek. Doing it any other way would be a loss of face, literally. It would be against the acceptable norms, the standards, the accepted rituals. So imagine what happens if after you've struck the cheek, you silently turn your head so that you seemingly offer the left cheek. If you act this out, and I tried it, do it in a mirror, you'll see that it's not possible to strike the left cheek with the back of the right hand. Standing there offering your left cheek became an act of resistance, of defiance. Your master is unable to discipline you with an acceptable fashion. His powerless is exposed for all to see, and with that he is shamed and dishonored. And more importantly, you have exposed the reality that the master and the slave are not in a right relationship, reflected in the good news. Similarly, if anyone takes your coat, typically this would be a soldier, someone with authority. Taking the coat would be a type of extortion. Since the coat refers to the outer garment in the times of Jesus, giving away your shirt meant you were giving away your undergarments, leaving you naked. Yes, you'd be embarrassed. But again, what is the really thing that's being exposed here? It's injustice, a lack of agape. Giving your shirt as well as your coat exposes the injustice of taking your coat in the first place. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but you know what? I think it makes a lot of sense. These examples demonstrate how agape for enemies. They are powerful, non-violent ways to expose injustice that Ewart addresses in his interpretation. It actually makes the reading of this whole thing have new meaning and furthers the idea of Jesus' non-violent and powerful message. It reminds me of Gandhi and Martin Luther King, who strenuously advocated for non-violent resistance and protesting. Today, protests often turn to violence. And you know what? Violence begets violence, and not accomplishing anything positive. Not doing the best in the interest of anyone, not agape for enemies. We certainly need to replace earthly expectations with that of the kingdom. And what about those enemies? Who is the enemy? People who are hostile to us, who wish harm, take advantage, or destroy another? Those who would gain personal satisfaction and benefit, taking away land, money, power, prestige, even adequate food, housing, water, security, a relatively safe life and lifestyle on the backs and the expenses of someone else? Often they use force, guile, trickery, greed, and definitely abuse. Or maybe less dramatic would be just someone who's different from us. Jesus gives us three ways today in today's Gospels to treat enemies to love. To agape our enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. Do good to those who hate you. Well, who hates you? I mean, literally, it means justly and honorably becoming non-violent. Bless those who curse you. I think that means that you focus and say something well, focusing on the good points. Now, I guess I have to go along with my mother on this one. If you can't say something nice about somebody, don't say anything at all. And you know what? You can still stand there, because I know I can be very outspoken. Here's where a respectful silence might say a great deal. And pray for those who hate you. Lift up to God on behalf. Ask God to help others so that they can see the ways of the kingdom, the ways of justice for all, to soften their hearts. How about doing something and not expecting anything in return? Surely we see that in families and communities, but what about the stranger, the alien, the other? Our world generally works like this. I give you this only if you give me that back. So let's be topsy-turvy for a bit. I willingly give to you what I have because you have a need. Not expecting and not knowing, but thinking down the road if someone, yourself, will give to me if I have a need. Not just because I gave to you, but if I have a need. I think about the pay it forward movement that happens. A few years ago, I went into a coffee shop and ordered a coffee and muffin for myself and my husband. When I went to pay for it, I was shocked the prior customer had left money to pay for our purchase. They did not know who would be getting it. There was no expectation of return. I cannot explain how that made me feel. I had just found out some troubling health concerns, and this random act of kindness was a total anonymous stranger. Made the world look pretty good. It put a positive spin on some news that was otherwise awful. The store person did a big, no, pointed to my hero, and I saw a look of happiness turn to one of just being okay on his face. He had wanted to remain unknown. I did thank and express how great of an impact the gesture had made. That helped, but truly, he wanted nothing, no acknowledgement. In turn, I've left money with servers to pay it forward, but I do a little bit different. I don't want to be acknowledged, so I sneak out of there after I leave the money. So I don't even know who gets it. It was enough knowing that a favor had been done for me, and I needed to pay it forward. And it can be infectious. Reminds me of at Christmas as a grandmother. You know how they look on the kid's face when you give them a gift? It's better to give than to receive. Well, think of what it would be like if it's better to give than to receive all year long. Just think of the many ministries that go on in this place. Feeding the hungry, providing soccer opportunities, giving time to a lonely, holding someone in prayer. Paying it forward with money for coffee, a genuine and warm smile, the precious gift of time, or just sending a card, thinking of you, helping someone with a heavy load. The possibilities are only limited by our imagination. Any act of random kindness can spawn another, and another, and another, and so it goes, which reinforces the gospel text, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, the golden rule. We are also told not to judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Does this mean that anything goes? I think not. It should mean that we abstain from critical attitudes about others just because they're different. Some things are better than others. Some people are better than others. So we have to gain insight when giving our opinion. It should be done with an open mind and with humility, remembering that old dogs can learn new tricks, and it works both ways. Make no mistake, we are to make choices. This is a teaching against stigmatizing people who are different than us. It's about removing the judgment labels. It remains to keep one's humanity and to relieve us of the obligation to treat anyone who we find as a friend and as a neighbor. The overall message of the passage is intended to break down stereotypes and barriers, ways to exclude the enemy, the stranger, the immigrant, the sinner, and so on and so on. Jesus calls us to agape, to totally desire the well-being of all others for their own good, expecting nothing in return. In other words, don't do to others as they do to you, but as you would like them to do to you. I'm going to repeat that again. Don't do to others as they do to you, but as you would like them to do to you. Love your enemies? Why? Because they're really nice people? Not necessarily. This is a most radical teaching. James Breach says, Jesus is the most loving and least sentimental man you can imagine. Love your enemies is not sentimentality. This is something that goes right to the heart. Jesus says, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who abuse you. And just watch what can happen. And when you forgive, you interrupt the endless cycle that creates something. Just look at how Joseph forgave his brothers and the whole family moved forward into a better way of living. Talk about love. This is a recipe for destroying the bundle of lies that come about for individuals and society with the existence of the moment we have learned to hate. Following this injunction is not just a nice thing to do, it's a matter of destroying the whole system of social and corporate injustice, which has been the way we have been living and moving in our social existence since the beginning of time. It's the recipe for deconstructing the whole business. We have to recognize the deep, deep, deep insight, the wisdom of that knowledge. David Luce, our Father Bill's favorite theologian, asked, what if the gospel words of Jesus aren't commands or instructions, but instead are a promise? The promise, essentially, that it doesn't have to be this way, that we can treat others the way we are treated. That is enough, more than enough. There is more than enough love, attention, food, worth, honor, their time to go around. That no matter how hard we play by the rules of this world, we're still struck in the death and loss that is part and parcel of our world. And that's the thing. Jesus isn't offering a simple set of rules which will help us get ahead, but he's striving to improve the whole world. A world that's not about measuring and counting, weighing and competing, judging and paying back, and hating all the rest, but instead is about true agape. Love for those who loved you, love for those who haven't, love even for those who hated you. That love gets expressed all kinds of creative ways, often seen in caring, extending care and compassion and help and comfort to those in need, and forgiveness, not paying back, but instead releasing one's claims on another and opening up the future of a relationship. You guessed it, agape love is still possible. Love itself, when you think about it, really makes no sense. For love defined most simply is seeking the good of another above your own. Agape. Love is not a means to an end, it is an end to itself, creating mortality, creating morality and justice, and all the rest of the things that we strive for. What is Jesus offering in this invitation? If the gospel is a promise, then we might just imagine that there is another world available to here to us, the kingdom on earth, where we can each treat each other as gifts of God and experience the transformation Jesus offers, where everyone is seen to have value just for being who they are. We can draw on today's psalm, where we must see that faith is inseparable for hope. It invites hope amid ongoing injustice and oppression. Not status quo, not by passively waiting for the call to, but thinking about active, nonviolent resistance. We have Jesus as the example. As William Sloane Coffin rightly said, hope criticizes what is. Hopelessness rationalizes it. Hope resists. Hopelessness adapts. I vote for hope. And so, my friends, let the nonviolent resistant example of Jesus give us the wisdom to bring about justice through the powerful use of agape love. Yes, we cannot do everything, but each and every one of us can do something to make this world a better place. So let it begin with me and with you, always remembering that agape love is this wholehearted, unreserved, unconditional desire for the well-being of the other. And for this I say, thanks be to God.